Hello, I'm Lisa Curcio, and I would love to welcome you here to Lisa's Stamp Studio. Today is Monday, March 14th. The year is 2022. This is a YouTube live streaming event. It is my privilege that you are here joining me, whether you are watching the live or you are watching the replay, whether this is your first time or you are returning to my channel. Thank you so much for joining the fun. Tonight, I've got a fun fold card for you that has an ocean theme, but don't worry, if that's not your gig, I got two other cards for you tonight. You're going to want to make sure you stick along with me through the whole video. In addition to the fun fold I'm going to be sharing with you tonight, I'm going to give you some great scrap technique tricks that you can use on other paper crafting projects. And as always, I'm going to offer up some tips and trips and techniques along the way. Now, before we get started on tonight's live stream, I have a couple housekeeping items I'd like to go over with you. First, we would love to chat with you, so do me a favor and log into your YouTube account, which requires your Gmail address. That's a YouTube thing, not a Lisa thing. You'll be able to leave a comment, or if you're here in the live chat, you can comment with ourselves as well as the other people watching the live stream. In addition to that, you're going to want to make sure you stick around to download that free project sheet. It's not only going to include all the cutting dimensions, pictures, and the supplies for the card I'm going to demonstrate tonight, but it's also going to include the other two cards that I'm going to share with you. So you're going to get a lot of ideas. That is completely free, and that link will be down in the video description below. And then finally, I want to take a moment to introduce you to Gina Curcio Hawley. You'll see Gina's name here in blue with a little wrench next to it. She is my daughter, but she's also the sales and marketing director here at Lisa's Stamp Studio, and she's been stamping the entire 23 years alongside of me. She is more than capable of being able to answer your questions and provide you with links during tonight's live stream. Because I'll be honest with you, I have a hard time doing both, the stamping and answering your questions, but we don't want your questions and concerns to be ignored. And as a reminder, I come back and I read every single comment, so I hope that you'll interact with us. Now, I've got some exciting news for you that pertains to this. If you have not heard about the online stamping retreat, we would love to have you join us. Thank you so much for the overwhelming response to registrations. But guess what? You better hurry. There's only 11 days left to register with us for this worldwide event. Doesn't matter if you are brand new to paper crafting, if you're a Stampin' Up demonstrator, perhaps you just love all kinds of fresh ideas. This is an event that you're going to enjoy, and it's going to feature myself, Gina, and #1 Australian demonstrator, Kylie Bertucci, and her husband, Bruno Bertucci. If you have not checked her out here on YouTube, I'm going to encourage you to do so and subscribe to her channel as well. Their work is beautiful, clean, and they're lots and lots of fun. This full day event is going to start in the US on March 25th, and it's going to extend into, wait, did I get the dates wrong? I think Gina's probably correcting me. The 26th and the 27th. I've kind of fast forwarded March a little bit. So Saturday here in the US, and we'll trickle over into Sunday. Now, if you're wondering, how am I going to stay up all night? Don't worry. The whole thing is going to be recorded live, so you can watch them at your convenience. You can stamp along with us, or you can stamp along at your own pace. Tons of information for you over on the online stampingretreat.podia.com. You'll see that link here on the screen. We sure would love to have you join us. All right, let's go. Let's get stamping. All right, I've got the trimmer out here, and we are going to start by doing some scoring. Now, my paper trimmer includes both the cutting and the scoring blade, and they're different colors, which makes it super, super easy to identify them here on that clear track. And that track is going to be super important tonight. They navigate up and down out of the way, which means that leaves this area for cutting and scoring free. Now, you're going to need 2 pieces of cardstock for this fun fold. These are measured 4 1/4 by 11. Don't worry about writing them all down. I've got it all for you in that project sheet. I got distracted because I saw Bruno Bertucci is here. Welcome, Bruno. We are going to start by scoring both of these in half. So that's at 5 1/2 inches, and I'm going to use that light blade to score. So that's one. And let's bring in the second one, and we're going to do the exact same thing, and I'll line that up at 5 1/2 inches. I don't do anything straight, so that little bridge here at the top, boy, that just helps me tons. Now, while I have this one in the trimmer, let's go ahead and let's work on this one first. One side of this, you're going to need to cut on an angle, and this is where the beauty of this clear guide comes into play. Now I'm going to fold this just a little bit so that you can hopefully see it on camera. But what I'm looking to do is cut from the outside corner tip up to the score line here. And I know it's going to be near the bottom of your screen. And I'm going to do my very best to keep my old head out of your camera view. I am looking to make sure that this and this are lined up in that track so that blade is going to travel correctly and give me that angled cut. Now I'm going to save this because I'm going to use that scrap for some fun things. But let's go ahead and let's do the same thing on this one. I'm going to crease it so that you can see. And I'm going to move that cutting blade down and out of the way. And once again, I'm navigating it so that tip here is in that cutting track and the bottom towards the crease here is at the bottom of your camera view. And just making sure they're as lined up the best that I can, we are going to cut. And you know, you can always use scraps for something else, right? Now I'm going to leave this to the side for just a minute. We're going to come back to that. But let's go ahead and let's work on these two pieces first because there's an insert to this you're not going to want to miss. And I've got a ton of tips and techniques for you tonight. Now I'm going to bring in my bone folder just to go up on that crease. The great thing about this is that obviously you can invert these. So I'm going to actually make this one go this way. So we're going to create a crisscross here. So I'm going to go ahead and crease up on this one and just create that nice fold line. Whenever you're doing a fun fold, you always want to reinforce those creases so that your card will lay nicely. Now while we're together, let's go ahead and let's give you some tips. Have you ever used your paper cutter and you've got a nice sharp blade, and when you invert the cardstock, you notice that it's slightly raised from the blade itself? Well, let me give you that tip. If you open it up flat and you take your bone folder and you go over it flat like this, you see how I'm leaving it on the table here? It's actually going to crease that paper back down to its original kind of depth because it kind of lifts it just a tad when you invert the cardstock. So just a great tip for you there. Now the next thing we're going to do is we are going to connect these. The closure on this card at the end is super important, so make sure you stick with me. I'm going to push that off to the side for just a minute, and I'm going to bring in my silicone craft sheet. Now, if you've watched my videos before, you know how much I absolutely love this because A, I'm messy. I get adhesive and stuff all over my work surface, and then I'm fighting it all night long, not trying to get it on my project, and I fight that little sticky spot. But tonight, I'm going to really get brave because I'm going to use liquid glue. And again, if you've watched my videos, you know I'm not a glue girl because I tend to use too much. So tonight we're going to go light-handed, and I want to talk to you about this holder. We've been getting lots and lots of questions about it. I have a link for you over on my website at lisastampstudio.com. If you click on shop, about the fifth one down, you'll see craft room favorites. I have several products that I use here in the studio that are not Stampin' Up! Products, but they aid me in my crafting, and I've linked them there for you as well. I love that because guess what? That means the glue is going to be always primarily at the tip. So I'm going to put that just off camera there, and I am going to get this started because I never trust my glue. I always want to make sure that it's not going to make a big blob mess and it's flowing well, which it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this back side and I'm going to add glue. Now, if you're like me and you tend to be heavy-handed, don't work near the outside edges. And then I'm going to put a little bit in the center. I always try to keep in mind that when I press, it's going to ooze. So I'm going to move this. And then what I'm going to do is I am actually going to shimmy these together. Now, I want to make sure I don't come too close to that score line here. Otherwise, it's going to have trouble closing. The reason the liquid glue is great for this is you need that little bit of wiggle room to kind of get this just where you want it. And then I'm going to press here, and I'm going to press here. Yep, everything's good. And then we're just going to push that in place. The glue that's near the edge now is kind of squished into the outside, which is going to mean it's going to keep it within the perimeters. Okay, so I'm going to set this aside for just a moment. We're going to come back to this and do some really cool things with this. But let's move over now to what's going to be the insert of the card. Now, this is a smaller piece of cardstock, and bear with me while I move a bunch of stuff out of the way because I made a mess in a short amount of time. This piece of white cardstock measures 3 5/8 by 5. And like I said, all of this is going to be in your free project sheet. And I'm going to stamp on here, and my stamp that I'm going to be using is rather large. Now, typically, I love to use my acrylic blocks for this, but if you've watched, you know I've got osteoarthritis in my joints, which makes pushing on some of those big, awkward shaped ones difficult. So I am going to bring in this. This is my Stamparatus. This is a stamp positioning tool. I absolutely love it because it takes the place of your clear block. So if you've got a nice big stamp like this one, and obviously this has a very unusual shape to the red rubber, it's great to use because it gives a little bit of help to your hands. Now I know you're going to get a little bit of glare from that camera and those lights, but bear with us. And you might be wondering where that's coming from. This whole stamp set, Waves of Inspiration, is actually on promotion right now. The stamps and the dies that go along with this, which I'll show you in just a moment, are going to be available from now through to the new catalog. However, there's amazing designer series paper, foils, and gems that are not, and they are only available now during the promotion period. And we'll chat about that a little bit more in case you fall in love with this like I have. I'm moving this underneath here. And the reason I'm doing so is I want to create a level playing field, because if I don't, this little platform kind of slightly goes downhill. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this underneath here just to kind of brace this. This also gives me a nice flat surface for me to ink this up. I am going to take this piece of cardstock. This is one of the magnets that comes with the Stamparatus, and I'm lining it up here on the outside of the grid paper, and I'm using that strong magnet to hold it in place. Now this comes with 2 magnets. They are incredibly strong. I really don't need 2. I find that 1 is sufficient. They're stored on the back side of the platform. You never want those to come in touch with each other, because if you get your fingers in there, it hurts. Ask me how I know. This is a small piece of grid paper that protects my platform if I think perhaps I may be stamping outside the line, which I know tonight that I probably will. Now there's 2 ink pads I want to get ready. I'm going to be using the Coastal Cabana for my wave, but I'm also going to be using the Pacific Point. So 2 contrasting colors, but wait till you see how beautiful this turns out. I'm going to open this first, and I'm going to leave this just slightly off your camera range because I'm a little tight on space. And I'm going to be using that with a sponge dauber. So I've got that here. Now I just love a sponge dauber for every color because I don't have to rinse them out. So I've got one here that's labeled, and I'll be using that. So let me see if I can try to move down in your camera view a little bit so I can squeeze a little bit more in here. All right, so let's go ahead and let's start by inking up our image. So I'm opening up the Coastal Cabana. I want to make sure my stamp case is underneath here so it's nice and sturdy. And I'm just going to lightly tap some color on there. Big stamp, so just make sure that you travel. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the Pacific Point dauber and I'm going to ink this up. I'm going to work in the corner. And I'm just going to randomly add some color to this. I am not worried about muddying the pad. I'm staying in the corner. They're similar color families. The blue on the Pacific Point is much darker. All right, I think that's good. And obviously you're going to experiment to see how much color you want. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to close that hinge. And normally I would press, but you know I have bad hands. We just talked about that. I have a YouTube viewer who gave me this. I have no idea what it's called. I'm not sure if she made it or bought it, but I'm telling you what, I've gotten numerous of these from viewers and I love them all. It's kind of like a glass that's been epoxied to a piece of foam, and it just helps me so I don't have to use those ailing hands. And I'm going to open this. Now the great thing about the Stamparatus, because it's mounted here, I'm able to close this once again, and if I see a spot that's not as dark as I want, I can go back over it for perfect positioning. But look at that two-tone. Isn't that fun? Oof, I love that. All right, let me take this and put that off to the side. We're done with that. But let's talk about how you clean this. Now, obviously, the hard thing would be to peel it off, right? So I want to show you this. This is the Simply Chamois. It comes the size, it looks really hard, but like any chamois, it's meant to hold a considerable amount of water. What I did is I actually cut that in half and I put it in one of our stamp cases. And I don't know if you know this or not, but you can get a package of these in my online store that are great for storage. So there it is, it's all cut and I've got it wet, okay? And I keep it in here, and especially here in Florida, it'll stay wet in there for a while. But even if it's not, you just get it wet again. And then I'm just going to go ahead and clean it while it's right on top of here. You are never going to want to put chemicals on your plates. That's really important. So I'm just going to wipe off all that dirty and put that off to the side. And then later when we're done, I'll just go ahead and just peel that off. Let's go ahead and let's remove that image. I'm going to take this and I'll move that out of the way. Here's another great thing for you. If you like to make multiples of the same card, because frankly, let's just face it, we typically don't want to make just one, right? Sit down and do a whole bunch of them. They're already mounted on the platform here, and you can do repeated images very, very easily. With this technique, because we mixed colors, you will want to clean this each time so that you don't end up muddying that image. All right, let me move that platform off to the side, and let's do a little bit more stamping here. I'm going to go back to that Pacific Point, and from that exact same stamp set, I am pulling out the words that say happy birthday. And I'm going to ink them up on that Pacific Point ink pad, and I'm going to stamp them. Now I'm going to tell you right now, I want you to remember that this is going to be in a pocket. So I want you to be cognizant about the placement. So I am going to gravitate just slightly off center. Boy, am I hoping I'm not getting my head in your camera and that this is going to be semi-straight. All right, that's kind of decent. That's good. I'm off to a good start. I'm done with this ink pad for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this to a piece of foil. Now, I know it's shiny, so I don't want to blind you, but look at that color. It mimics the ink pad. Now, this is the beauty of Stampin' Up! Products, is the color coordination. So the ink matches the paper, that matches the coordinating accessories, the markers, and the list goes on. Remember I told you that the foils and designer series papers and gems for this suite were going to be on promotion right now. Now I want to show you the other two colors. In addition to this beautiful color, there's that Pacific Point, and there is that gorgeous silver. And I know you can use these with a myriad of projects, and they're stunning. So I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to use adhesive. Remember I told you I was messy, so I don't like to use liquid glue on my foils because if I don't get it on there just right, it smears on here and it kind of mars my foils. So I'm just going to stick to my adhesive for this one, and then I'm going to border it on top of here. Now, of course, you can use colored cardstock or anything else you'd like, but I wanted to give it that little bit of pop of color. Now, we're going to come back to this in just a minute because I want to add an accoutrement to this because I love accessories. So let me put this off to the side. And now let's talk about this. Now there are numerous things we're going to be doing here tonight, and I'm going to be teaching you some paper techniques that I think you're going to really love. You can use them on all kinds of cards. But the first thing is I want to add designer series paper to this. And you're probably thinking, right, well, it's not hard, so let me show you. This is that designer series paper that I was talking to you about that's part of this promotion. This gorgeous paper is called Waves of Ocean, and it was actually hand poured with paint on canvas by the concept artists at Stampin' Up. And I think if you were here, you would be able to see that canvas look. Double-sided, and there's different patterns throughout the whole package. Absolutely stunning. But we're going to need to have some angles on that paper to make this work. So I told myself before you joined me, Lisa, don't cut this the wrong way. And if you do at home, don't worry, because the paper can be inverted, and I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to turn it this way, and I'm going to determine that I want to cut it from the upper left to the bottom right, which is going to work on both sides of this fun fold. So here we go again, upper left, bottom right, very similar to what we did to the card base. I am looking to make sure that the tips are going to fall within the track, and then once I'm happy with it, I'm just going to slice, and that's going to give us these two pieces. All right, let me move this, and let's go back to this. Now, one of these will go here, and watch, one of these will go here. If you happen to want your card identical, you would need to cut that rectangle twice. Once from left to right, and the next time from right to left. That would equal you 2 exact pieces of designer series paper. Here's my thought process. This paper is so gorgeous, let's use both sides of it, right? So we are going to work with this side separately, independently from this. Just for fun, let's go ahead and let's attach this one first. And as we talked about, because we have some really pointy tips here, we're going to go to glue. So I'm going to flip this over, and I've got my little glue holder here once again. And because it's sitting and I don't trust myself, I am going to get that started. Again, I'm not going to work too close to my edge and a little bit in the middle. The one thing about the multi-purpose glue, this is sold in my online store, is it's very, very strong. So you don't have to cover every single inch. Now I'm going to open this up. I'm going to put this underneath so you can see a little bit better. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mimic this to leave a little bit of a border. Again, Liquid glue is going to give you that little bit of wiggle room. That's going to be wonderful to try to keep it even. Now, once you have it in place, just give it a little press. And this we're going to put off to the side. Now, on this side, obviously, we could stick it down, but that doesn't give me an opportunity to teach you some really cool things. So let's go ahead and work on that next. I'm going to push this off to the side. And do you remember that we had that scrap that we cut away? Let's go ahead and use that. We're going to use this to our advantage to do some stamping. So here I've got my Memento Black ink pad. This is a water-based pad that I absolutely love when you're going to color in with alcohol-based markers. Again, the image I've chosen has come in from that stamp set. Look at this pelican on top of these pylons. Isn't this neat? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ink this up, and I'm going to stamp that here. Great news, there's a die for this. You don't have to worry about it not being on a piece of scrap. I'm taking this just off camera, and I'm going to put it on my Stampin' Scrub, or of course, you can use your chamois if you want, whatever works for you. I do a lot of stamping, so I do the scrub for me, and I love the chamois for my stamp positioning tool, the Stamparatus. Now, I am not going to color this in while you're watching, because that's tedious, but I have some great tips for you that I want to share tonight. And I'm concerned, am I a little out of focus? Gina, if you would just verify for me, that would be great. Now, two markers that you're absolutely going to want to put on your wish list are the brand new Natural Tones markers. And these are fantastic because there is a whole myriad of browns. Now, I know that they are not in stock right now because you all love them that much, but they're coming back the week of April 4th, so hang tight. And they will be in the new catalog that debuts in the beginning of May. And the one reason that I love these is they're not just for skin tones. They can be used for anything that's brown, animals and fencing and pylons. So the markers that are alcohol-based, these are called the Stampin' Blends, are dual-sided. So there's a line here that indicates the size of the tip. And you're going to use them however you choose based on the image size. Now I'm only going to do a small area. So I'm starting with the lightest of the two colors first. And I am going to add some color here. And I'm going to work pretty quickly because this is all one big area. Okay, so I'm going to come across the top, add a little color across the bottom. Now this is going to need to sit and process before I add the darker color. That's very, very important because you want to allow some of that alcohol base to dissipate. And you also want to make sure that you're going to be able to not keep it from bleeding outside the lines. But while that's doing that, I want to show you one other thing. I chose to use the Gray Granite Stampin' Blends markers. Now they typically come in a combo pack of a light and the dark of a single shade. These are an exception. This is perfect for the Pelican because I want them white, but I don't want them too white. So I'm going to start with the lightest shade first, and because that's so small, I'm going to use that chisel tip this time. Now we're going to give him a little bit of color, and you're going to see I'm being real messy about this because I don't want him to come out too gray. You're going to let that process, and while it does, here comes my next tip. These two colors are going to make the perfect beak color, in my opinion. So this is Dark Daffodil Delight and Light Pumpkin Pie. Don't overlook mixing your colors together to get another custom shade. And I think this is something we often overlook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just kind of go over the beak really quickly, and I know it's going to bleed because I'm going really fast. I did the feet, I did some areas here, but wait till I come back to it. Remember this dark brown? Watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a little bit here around the outside. I'm not even going to be neat about this because it's not going to look like this when we're all done, okay? And I'm going to let that sit and process. Now the beauty of these is when you blend them together. That's how it makes it look all fancy. Now we're going to come back to this, and this is where I'm going to add the light pumpkin pie. And I'm just going to very lightly add some color here. But do you see what it's done? It's taken that yellow and it's made it kind of a yellowy orange color. So let me show you here. I'm going to let that process. While it does, I'm working on to the next color. This is what I love. I don't have to stop and wait. This now is the dark. So I'm going to use the little lines that the concept artist put in the stamp set to my advantage, and I'm adding some additional color. Now that that's had time, watch what we're going to do. We are going to add this over the top, and I'm going to let that sit and process. You'll actually start to see it evaporate right before your eyes, and that now is going to give you a totally different color. Mix and match, expound the use of your products. Remember these browns? We're going to go back to the light, and this is where the magic comes in. I'm taking this light and I'm pulling it into the dark. I love, love, love these markers because they make me look like a hero. I'll tell you what, I am not a professional with these markers. I'm learning alcohol-based markers and I love them. But when I'm all done, it sure looks like I'm a professional. That's going to need a few minutes to dissipate and evaporate. And while we're at it, let's talk about this. This is an overlooked alcohol-based marker. It's called a color lifter. If you happen to color something and it got too dark for you, don't you worry. You take your color lifter and you go right over that, and what's going to happen is it's actually going to lighten the shade. Now I got super aggressive, and that is the alcohol base, so I want to make sure that you're aware of something. You store these horizontally. Don't store them like this because that alcohol then will want to dissipate to one end. This will change the way you color, I promise. Now I did that beforehand, and guess what? There is a die for this. Now, if you're like me and you're dealing with trying to keep this perfectly aligned, because look how detailed that is. Let's talk about this. This is the Post-it labeling and cover-up tape. I just ripped the width in half. I am going to place that here once it's all colored, and I can anchor this down across my image and across the die and run this through my die cutting machine, and it's going to come out perfect every single time. There's no shifting. This is in my craft room favorites for you, and here is the best part. You are going to be able to run this through your die cutting machine numerous times with this tape, and you are never going to have to worry about having to replace this every time you use it. It is fantastic. Okay, so I'm checking. You guys said the image is not very clear. So I'm just going to try to play with this 1 second because there's nothing worse than a blurry stream. So there we go. I hope that's better. So I've given you some great tips about that. Now let me show you something else I did. In that same die set, there are some fantastic clouds. So I took these and I ran those through the die cutting machine before you joined me, and that has left me with these. Now I want to talk to you about adding some pizzazz to these. Now if you like them the way they are, that's fantastic, but let me teach you another trick. So I've got a scrap piece of the grid paper here. This is the same one I used in that stamp Eratus. And here is my wink of Stella. Now I love this because I love glitter and pizzazz and shimmer, but sometimes on a masculine card, this is what's kind of leaning towards, you don't want it too shimmery, right? So you're going to want to give it a good shake. You'll want to prime it the first time that you use it, or if it's been sitting and it says push, so you'll know, and it'll run through the bristles. I'm going to hold this and I'm going to brush on that shimmer pen right onto my clouds. There is a chemical base in here. I tend to think it's alcohol based, but someone says it's not. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, it's fantastic because it dries lickety-split. You can add multiple coats to this. That's going to give you the most beautiful shimmer and intensity based on what you want. Now, I know you probably can't appreciate that, but it's going to look gorgeous when we're done. So I'm going to set those off to the side here, and we're going to put those together. Here comes the fun part that I wanted to teach you. I've got 2 pieces of crumb cake cardstock here. They're about 2 inches wide. You're gonna want them at least 5.5 inches long because that's gonna cover the circumference or the length of this card. Watch. You are gonna use your thumb and index finger of your non-dominant hand as your guide, and we are going to rip, but wait until you see what we do with this. I gave myself plenty of width here so that I could really be creative. So I'm gonna kind of go like this. I'm using this thumb and index finger, going up and down and up and down. Here's the beauty. If you flip it over, you actually have 2 pieces. But I'm going to do something different with this one because I want to teach you another trick. The Stampin' Up cardstock is amazing, and there isn't another one like it on the market, and it's not because I sell it. It is colored all the way through. Do you see that? Which means when you rip it, you don't have the white fibers from the second layer, colored from front to back. Fantastic. Now I only need 1 of these, but I want to do something different from here. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to rip a little bit on this one this way. And again, this is like a no-brainer. You just have fun. And then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to do the same thing now on this side. So how wide or how shallow is completely up to you. The trick is to tear towards yourself. Now you can save these for upcoming cards, and then these 2 can work together. And I can tell already, I think I want this taller one. Yep, I think I do. Do you see I wrote on it so I knew which piece to tear? Let me take my handy dandy pencil. I love this pencil, soft lead, and the eraser works like a charm. It's in my craft room favorites. You'll love it. But these two pieces are now going to be the crux of what I'm going to be doing to decorate that flap. And wait till you see what we're going to do with this. So here what I've done is I'm going to bring in that scratch paper once again. And this time I'm going to be using the coordinating ink, which is the crumb cake ink for this. Let's go ahead and let's open this up. And you need a separate sponge dauber. Remember, you don't want to mix those unless you've washed them really good. And you want to make sure that they run clear. You don't want to transfer one dye to another. This one's dedicated for crumb cake. Now, I'm not going to bore you with doing them both because I've got a couple finished, but this is the tip I want to teach you, and I have another tip on top of that. So I'm going to work here in the corner. You know why? I find that when we stamp with our images, we tend to gravitate to the center, don't we? So if you move your dauber to the outside edges, the higher consistency of ink tends to be there. So I'm going to ink this up, and I'm going to come and run it right across the outside edge. I don't care if that cardstock frays a little bit more, that's what I'm after. And I'm going to do this all the way across. Now, some of you might be wondering, isn't there another way? And the answer is yes, and I'm going to show you. If you don't have a sponge dauber, use your ink pad. You can actually take your pad and your cardstock, and you're going to lightly scrape it on there. The more forward you go, the more color will come to the front. The more you stay to the edges, the more it will stay upon the edge of the cardstock. Now, you're going to do that all the way around. I wanted kind of that hazy kind of look. So I'm going to go all the way around here. And I know some of you are probably thinking, I know where you're going with this, but wait till you see what we do next. All right. Now, I've got one already done with this one, but just so that you're aware, I did the same thing all the way around on this piece as well. So here we go. We've got this brown just the way I want it. I'm going to put the dauber off to the side. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to bring back in the Stamparatus. So you will recall that we had this. So let's go ahead and put our stamp case here to brace that stamp. And we're going to ink it here. I'm not too concerned about you seeing the platform because I'm using this in a fresh way. You are going to ink up the top portion of your wave. So I'm going to ink it up like this. Love that. Those pads fit perfectly. And now watch. I am going to take this face down and I'm going to press it against the waves. And I'm working all the way across here. And I'm really hoping this is going to pick up on camera. If not, in that project sheet, all that's in there. What's happened is all the dotted foam from the sea, from the wave, has now created a sand type effect on the cardstock. I hope you can see that. I found that even if you went down inside the wave, it gave you kind of like a swirl that you get in the sand. And I absolutely love the way it looked because it gave it more realism. Now, just like before, you're going to want to clean your stamp off with your chamois. Never put your stamps away dirty. That's really important. I'm going to move this off to the side. And I just wanted to share that tip with you. And then I've got two that are already finished. And now we're going to finish putting this part of the card together. Now, remember, I've got several other samples to share with you. So here are the two I created before you joined me. Now, very, very important. We are going to have to get them on here, right? Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is work with the bigger piece. And heavens, make sure you're going the right way because I've made that mistake. It's going to end up going this way. So what you're going to do is you're going to adhere this. Now I'm going to bring in the silicone craft sheet and I'm going to use adhesive this time. So I'm going to add that to the back. So I got a heavy hand tonight. Okay, there we go. Again, liquid glue would be fine, but I'm just going to add a little bit of adhesive here and here. All right, now what we're going to do, let me go back over this corner because I pushed too hard, is we are going to work down here at the very bottom of the designer series paper. So you want to make sure that you match up the bottom right side with the bottom right side of the designer series paper. And I'm coming all the way across to that tip. And I'm going to press that in place. Don't worry about this. We'll talk about that in a minute. This layer, this is where you're going to do a little bit of finagling. So you might decide, oh, it's going to go this way or will it look better this way? You can choose. I think tonight, I think I'm going to go this way. So I'm going to turn this upside down. This is where you're going to use dimensionals. And I want you to be careful where you put them. I know that I like to use a lot of dimensionals because I know my card is going to go through the mail meter at the post office, which has rollers. You don't need to cover all of this, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. So I'm going to take one and I'm going to add that. I think that's going to go on this side. So we got to make sure we go here to the edge. And then we're going to take this one and go here, and then this one go here. And I'm going to fall a little bit short because if I end up needing one, I can show you how to do what I call card surgery. Now I'm going to look at this. I'm going to go, okay, let's put this like this. That's going to be really neat. And I might not need another. Let's take off that backing because remember, we've got that Pelican and pylon, don't we? So what we're going to do now is we are going to take this and we are going to mimic over the top. This layer now creates more density to the card and creates a 3D image that's absolutely stunning. Now I'm not going to worry about this just yet because I am going to work what's on my back side. You need a pair of sticky scissors in your house. These are the ones I designate with a piece of ribbon, which means they can be gunked up. Don't gunk up my good ones, right? So I'm using this as my guide and I'm coming up here and I'm cutting it away. I don't put this back in my trimmer for a very good reason. I don't want to gunk up the blade on my trimmer. There's absolutely nothing worse than that. So what I've done now is I've created that correct angle. If this is flopping, do you see that it is? Watch what we're going to do. We are going to take off the other side of the paper right here on the paper that it's adhered to. We are going to pick this up, and this is what I call card surgery. Now we can very lightly use that pliable paper to lift and press that in place. Sometimes I just tuck it underneath there if I have to. My take your pick tool is like my third hand. I cannot live without it. It has a putty tip to lift up those small pieces of cardstock like those little clouds. It has interchangeable tips, and that paper piercing tool attachment helps me to remove the dimensional backing as well as get into those tight places and of course pierce cardstock. All right, here comes the fun part. Remember our Pelican? All right. So remember, we didn't fill this entirely with dimensionals for a reason because you're going to have to find where he's going to fit. And if they're too close together, you're not going to have a space to slide this down. We are not going to need anything at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my dimensionals once again. And I'm working up towards the center. I'm going to add one there. I'm going to add one here. And I'm going to need mini dimensionals now because that gets narrower. I know some of you like to cut your big ones in half, go for it. And if you'd like to know how to do that, leave it on the paper and then take your scissors and do it this way. That'll keep your scissors from getting all gunked up and holding them in your hand. And we want to brace that head. We want to make sure that that's not going to get ruined or crushed or distorted when it goes through the mail. And now we're going to take off those backings. That bottom now is free from any adhesive that's going to allow us to put this where we wanted it. So if you need to, you're going to go a little right or a little left. And I'm looking to make sure he's not crooked. Otherwise, he's going to be in a storm, right? All right. And then we're going to tack that in place. All right. These clouds are going to play a very strategic role in just a moment. We are going to flip this over and we're going to add it to this flap. Now, don't miss these other cards because I did this one fussy on purpose because I want to give you all these other cool tips you can do with your paper. Again, getting that glue started, that has saved me lots of wasted cardstock over the years. And we're going to come in here and we're going to add our glue. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that to help me lift it. And then this is going to go on that flap. So it's going to go this way. I don't like to work within my card. So I'm going to open it flat. I'm going to lay it here and then kind of just slide it around. That liquid glue gives you some time to try to find myself a margin all the way around. We're going to give that a press. And then just because there's always ink on my fingers, I'm going to rub from the inside. Very, very important. We'll come back to those. We need to seal this correctly. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to infringe on the pocket space for that beautiful insert that we created. All right, so let's talk about where you're going to put adhesive and what adhesive you should be using. I do not put it here because intuitively that's what we want to do, right? But we're going to put it here and here. And I recommend Terran tape. It's the best choice. It's a super, super strong tape. Literally, it's non-destructible. This stuff is amazing. You're going to want to make sure that you're working as close to the bottom of this as possible. And don't worry if you go outside the peak. We're going to talk about that as well. I'm going to turn this to make it a little easier for my hand. And then we're going to work from the inside, close to the edge as possible, coming all the way across, and then tearing. This is double-sided, so this now is paper. You're going to want to burnish this or press this into the cardstock so that you have really good contact with the paper and the adhesive. Now you're probably wondering what goes first, left or right. Guess what? It doesn't matter. It's your card. You can do whatever you want. This time I'm going to have this one go down first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my paper piercing tool attachment and I'm going to remove the paper backing. Now you'll recall that I told you that there's excess adhesive here. Do you see it? You're going to want to curl this up on top of itself and stay within the perimeters of the point so that it doesn't stick from the outside. And then what we're going to do is we are going to seal this pocket shut and we are going to press. Now this is going to adhere to here. If you put it across the center, you're going to miss a spot. So we're going to do the exact same thing here. I'm going to work upside down and I'm going to pull off that tape. Again, there's that little bit. We're going to curl that down on top of itself. And now we are going to close it. Again, I'm looking here across the bottom and I'm going to press. I don't like to mash from the front, so we're going to give it a good cursory press from the back. And we have our pocket. Just think of all the cool things you can put in here. Now here is the next tip that you need. This, remember, gorgeous, huh? This is going to come down inside of here. My best tip for you is if you're adding any embellishments or any extra images like I am, such as my clouds, that you are going to do this while it's in the pocket, because what you don't want is for them to catch as it's coming in and out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of take this one, and I know I'm going to place that firm on top of here. So let's go ahead now and let's flip this over, and I am actually going to use a little bit more liquid glue. I'm feeling really brave tonight. And I'm going to add a little bit here to the back side. I want to make sure I don't use too much. And that's small to pick up, so I'm going to have this help me. And then this now is going to get slid carefully because I don't want to, string neck glue all along there, and put that down here. Now that I've got an idea of where that's going to be, this one I want elevated. And I know that's probably really difficult to see. But this one I want elevated. But I need to be careful, again, so it doesn't catch. So this one's either going to have to go here or somewhere down here in the center. And let's see, I'm kind of thinking up here. So let's flip this over. I am going to grab a couple mini dimensionals. So I'm going to put one here, and I'll take another one and stick that there. And now this is going to give a 3D effect to the one that's already there. And I'm real excited to share these other cards with you. This is a great fun fold, and you can use it for lots and lots of things. So there we go. We've got our little pocket, and here we go. We've got our card. Great place for you to sign. If you're feeling really zealous, you can put a gift card on the back with a couple glue dots. Isn't this fantastic? And again, I really upscaled this one because I wanted to give you a bunch of tips about coloring and about the paper. Do not overlook your stamp sets. You're going to be able to find that the texture on some of your sets can be used to create other things. Work outside the box. Now let me show you these other two cards that I made for you. Again, these other two cards are going to be part of your project sheet. Now this first one is from the Rainbow of Happiness. Very, very different, isn't it? It uses the Abstract Beauty Designer Series paper, which is not intuitive to a rainbow set, but I love the way this came out. This really has a modern vibe to it. I did gold embossing powder for this arch here. I embossed this in white on black cardstock. And let me show you what I did here on the inside. This is called Lucky You, the stamp set. So the greetings are actually scripted into an etched background. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but do you see the gold here on the inside to kind of pick up the paper? There's a stamp inside the stamp set called Artistically Inked that is going to give you lots of fun things that you can use with both the Rainbow of Happiness and the Lucky You stamp set. And obviously you can come up with all different ways to do this, but simple and tucks down right inside. And this one uses a colored card base. I don't know if you noticed it or not, but do you see this? I put a vellum circle behind here because I found that that was just enough of a transparent look between here that it kind of elevated this without it blending into the background. So here is your second one. Now this third one uses a completely different element. This is called Artfully Layered, and I used the bundle. So this is awesome also as a masculine card if you change up the colors a little bit because it has a real woodsy feel with these ferns and leaves. The dies with this are fantastic. The designer series paper is amazing, beautiful stuff. Here you might be wondering how I did this, and all I did was simply fussy cut around the greetings. And by the way, I absolutely love that look. We don't have enough of it. So here you go. Here's the insert for this one, and these are all from the same stamp set. And those leaves are part of the stamps as well. Isn't this pretty? So these are all birthday cards, you can see, or you can use them for congratulations cards, and you can change up your greetings. 3 different ways that you can use this. Now there's a couple things that I want to make sure that you know about. So do me a favor while I'm switching the camera view here, if you would leave me a comment and tell me which one of those is your favorite. Your feedback is so important. You're going to want to mark your calendar, but before you do that, you're going to want to head over to my website, scroll all the way to the bottom and click on the word subscribe there and sign up for my free weekly e-newsletter. It's sent every Thursday. You're going to get a PDF tutorial, step-by-step instructions, color photo, cutting dimensions, and supplies. That project is not shared on any of my other platforms. It is exclusive to the newsletter. It's a no-frills thing. We would love to have you join us. While you're on my website, you can request your catalogs. You can check out my extensive PDF tutorial. And before you go, make sure you subscribe here to my YouTube channel and click the little bell picture that's next to it and the word all, because you're not going to want to miss when I come back next Monday, which is, I'm looking, March 21st at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, because I got another great fun fold card for you with lots more tips. I hope that you will be here to join me. Gina, thanks for all your hard work moderating tonight, and thank you all for being here with me. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye, everyone.